fallout, smoke, women crying for their sons because their sons are not, Romans killing riotous groups that are rising up. Free Judea, free our people, autonomy for Israel. You had Herod, an Edomite, and his dynasty. Herod's ruling, killing any potential threat, any potential Messiah. Then you had the Pharisees and the Sadducees, that we learn from Josephus are not Jews by birth. No.
Brothers and sisters, they are there. We are not lost. We are scattered. We are original Hebrew.
Let's go! All praises be to the Most High God. Yeah, I say it.
I was opportune to meet my grandparents, whom from childhood had always made us to understand that we are one of the lost tribes of Israel. Okay. So from my grandmother.
Right. Now look at these. Yeah, I'm telling you, I gotta show y'all. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Just look for yourself. And this is the creme de la creme. All praises be to the Most High Yah. Everything we've been through, y'all, the Most High is going to retribute it on all the nations that have had a hand in the oppression of his apple, the apple of his eye, his chosen people, his beloved, his fervent lover, his only begotten. They're going to have their part in the lake of fire. You see them tormented by some kind of creature. I don't even know what that even is, y'all. Judgment in chains. He that led into captivity shall go into captivity. All praise to the Most High Yah. What's up, Zion Dynasty? This is your favorite dreaded Israelite, the man, the myth, and the legend, Mr. JB Zion. Y'all show me some love, show me some love. Y'all already know what time it is. Your boy is about to hit y'all with another banger. All praises, honor, glory, dominion, splendor, majesty, world without end to the mighty one of Jacob, the holy one of Israel, the restorer of the 12 tribes and the resurrection of the greatest nation to ever walk this earth. I'm talking about the Most High Yah. All praises. First, I want to say shalom, peace, love, blessings, prosperity, peace to the full, to the overflow, to all my Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters, all those that's woke, all those that know who they are, all those that believe in Deuteronomy 28, but believe that the Most High ain't gonna leave us like that, that the Most High shall return and restore Zion, but not just y'all. I want to say peace, love, blessings to all the Gentile supporters, those that put their necks on the chopping block of truth, that stand for the greatest nation, that stand for the restoration of the 12 tribes of Israel. I want to say peace, love, and blessing to y'all as well. Me and Shiny D, this ministry of Zion Dynasty, we could not thank y'all enough, y'all. We cannot do this work without y'all. It's a grind, it's a push, but this is y'all's history. And this is the channel where we bring it out. This is the channel where we bring in that smoke. Where we bring in that smoke. And to all my doubters, to all those that get on here to troll, all those undercover Edomites, all those undercover urban apologists that went to the cemetery grave school
to be able to learn absolutely diddly squat.
Oh, y'all, I love y'all. Y'all motivate me. Y'all have me up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to give y'all these buckets because I got all the smoke and all the work. Let's go. Yoruba Benai Ephraim of the tribe of Joseph, that is of the son of Jacob, that is your favorite dreaded Israelite, and we finna hit it, y'all. So first, I just want to tell y'all, I couldn't thank y'all enough for y'all just supporting, prophesying, edifying, just donating to the channel, to this ministry, to this work. We could not do this without y'all. So family, I'm gonna put that Cash App up. If you guys want to donate, if you want to support and allow me and Shiny D to go that much harder to get this message out to y'all, it's a lot of research, y'all. It's a lot of books that I have to research, look into, read, study, verify, fact check, and all that stuff. But y'all already know that this is the channel where we do these things. This is the channel where we got Oxford scholars like Edith Bruder that prove the black Jews of Africa. We're not just there. We got Harvard scholars just like Tudor Parfit, the professor, that in his, I said Harvard now, Black Jews of Africa and the Americans also, that's another source. But not just that, we got African Zion, which is a Cambridge accredited book by Tudor Parfit and Edith Bruder that goes into this history, y'all. It's so many receipts, so many fact checks, so many verified. We got the oral tradition of the Yoruba and the Igbo. Y'all saw one in the clip. We talked about how the Yoruba oral tradition of them being Moors, Sephardic Israelites that migrated from Spain, that it's not just them talking, not just them blowing smoke, but Ulysses Santa Maria, the Cambridge author, also verifies this oral tradition. I showed y'all the DNA. We found the Harvard study that showed the Negro DNA going back to ancient Netufia in the land of Israel, E1B1A. But E1B1A, we showed you guys my personal 23andMe. I showed you guys the My True Ancestry that takes Negro DNA and bases it or compares it against multiple time frames. We saw that, y'all. We saw how we're linked to Iberia or ancient Spain, and that we are in fact linked to the Moorish Israelites. We've gone, I'm talking about receipts everywhere, y'all. We got the Jewish Encyclopedia, we got Tudor Parfit, we got Edith Bruder, we got the Bible Dictionary that says that Ham was the father of the dark races, not the Negro. It's just so many facts, y'all, and not even including the most powerful foundation that we got, which is the word of the Most High God, even Iye, Ashe Iye, that we went into the prophecies. We showed how we would have a yoke of iron around our neck, that we would go into Egypt again on slave ships, that we will be carried away by a nation as swift as the eagle flies, that we will be sold to a people as bond women and bond men, that we will be cursed in the city, we will be cursed in the field, that strangers would rise up and LGBT different groups would rise up and get reparation offers before we do. Y'all, it's too many prophecies. Oh, I ain't even talked about Joel chapter 3 that says, oh, Tyre and Zidon, what am I going to do to y'all for you selling my people, the children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem, into the hand of the Grecians? Y'all, we got all the smoke. Y'all don't get me started. So we finna go in, y'all. I'm gonna put that cash up if you guys want to support this work, however the Most High Yah uses y'all, and we gonna hit it, y'all. So first, y'all, I'm gonna do a quick review. We have been talking about Edom. We have been talking about Esau. We have been proving to all the urban apologists, scumbucket, trolling machine, little junkies that went to the cemetery graveyard for their education, we have proved that Esau is the last ruling empire, family. Edom and all of the constituent countries, the constituent nations that come out of this people will be the last ruling empire before Yeshua, the return of the Messiah for the Israelites, before he comes back, establishes his kingdom, world without end, checkmate on all these nations, right? So we went to the hidden book in the Apocrypha, 2nd Esdras, chapter 6, verse 9. Let's read it. And it reads, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. We talked about that this worldview, these contrary world ideologies would be in conflict. We looked at the legends of the Jews where we saw that Shem prophesied to Rebekah, who is the foremother of these two nations, Jacob, who would give birth to Solomon, the builder of the temple, the representation of the ideology of Torah and selflessness and family. And we looked at Esau, who would be the father of this capitalistic, critical race theory-based society, and all of these European Edomite descendants that they will rule in the end before the Most High establishes Jacob, that rock cut off without hands. He shatters all these empires, and our people rule world without end. So we went through all of that, y'all. And y'all check out all these other videos that we talked about, y'all. It's so many that y'all got to get caught up on, right? We talked about World War III. Family, we are in the greatest season, let's go, that you could ever fathom and thank the Most High Yah to be a part of. This is the greatest awakening. Every time we see these amazing things happening in the news, I call it amazing. Because when you hear about all these wars, when you look at Russia, you start thinking Gog and Magog, right? When you see all this going on, this chaos, this pandemic in which the nations are trying to create this one world order and all this stuff going on, just know, Zion, that our redemption draws nigh. We talked about World War III. We talked about Gog and Magog. We talked about in different scholarly works, such as by Shlomo Sand, the Jewish geneticist, We talked about Arthur Koestler and the 13th tribe, linking a lot of those southern Russian, Khazarian, Edomites to the present Jewry. So it just had us thinking. We talked about a lot of that history, y'all. And not just that, but in the last couple of videos, y'all, we have been dealing with the second Exodus and our people being delivered from the land of the north. We went into excruciating detail on the land of the north being linked to America, and America being that fourth beast of Daniel chapter 7. And not just that, but also on the statue that Daniel interpreted the dream for King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Y'all, I know it's a lot, y'all. Y'all gotta go back and watch these. I'm trying to give y'all a recap. But basically those toes on the statue, the iron mixed with clay, is also linked to the dreadful, terrible beast of Daniel chapter 7, that fourth beast that has iron teeth, right? And we saw in 2nd Esdras that Ezra saw this fourth beast come up out of the sea. Now we then went to Revelation 13, that where John the apostle sees this dreadful beast come out the sea. But in Ezra, in the apocryphal 2nd Esdras book, we see Ezra is given an animal interpretation, that this fourth beast, this beast that comes out of the sea that John saw, the animal is the eagle, right? So we see through various sources, Daniel, John the apostle, and Ezra the prophet, that this last empire, this last beast, this last people to rule, their symbol would be the eagle. This goes to America. This goes to NATO, the European nations that are ruling in the end of the world, right? So we saw that when that lion, now that lion symbolizes the Most High, symbolizes Yeshua, and symbolizes Zion itself, the Israelite people, that when we wake up, because we read in the story where as soon as that lion said, wait a second, that lion came through as if he was chased by the Most High himself and said, what's going on here? O eagle, aren't you the fourth beast whom I have made to rule in my world, that the end of all the nations might come through the Gentiles, that might come through you, O eagle? And as soon as that lion becomes aware of who he is and who his adversary is, we see immediately that eagle is caught up in flames. So y'all gotta check out those videos. We went in showing that America is that end time Babylon, along with NATO and the 10 toes that come out, because the beast, the dragon, right, has multiple heads that we read about in the book of Revelation. But y'all gotta check those videos out. But in today's video, y'all, we are about to talk about the fall of the Gentile power construct. This is gonna be heavy. Now, I've already been teasing it with the last couple of videos, talking about World War III, talking about the second Exodus, talking about America's role, because America as that eagle, the Bible prophesied that that eagle would stomp the residue of Yah's people under its feet. That means that we read how that eagle would have 12 feathers. That eagle cloaks itself like a suicide bomber with Yah's people. This is what the nations have been doing, y'all. It's a deep spiritual thing. But the nations are trying to shield themselves with us. Because as long as they can keep us laden in iniquity, as long as they can keep Zion think we niggas, spicks and spoons and cartoons of Black Sambo, as long as they can keep Yah's people being gunned down on the streets and thinking that they thugs and gangsters with their pants hanging down, as long as they can keep our minds in shackles, the Most High almost has to judge us, and the nations get to hide behind us and keep us under the Most High's wrath while they escape. But we know that this ain't gonna keep up, y'all. This is not gonna be able to be sustained, because the Most High is waking up his people. And as he turns us back to our lifestyle of Torah and the law, statutes, and commandments and the faith of Yeshua, that the nations, as we rise, we see them fall. And this is exactly what's going on right now, y'all. So this is some powerful stuff. But we're gonna go through the history in great detail. I hope this video it might end up needing to be another series. We're gonna go through how these Gentiles came to power and how they're gonna be nailed in the coffin, and how our people and our government and lifestyle of Torah got next, y'all. We got next, y'all. World without end. Let's go. And when we come to power, the Most High said he gonna uproot Edom out of the heavens. That when you take something by the root, I ain't just talking about you pluck what you can see. The Most High is gonna dig deep and uproot every ounce of white supremacy. That these Gentiles ain't never coming back to power, and most of them gonna be put to death. And the ones that might be spared going into captivity, hence the Vornay right here. All praises be to the Most High Yah. So let's go through the historical rise of these Gentiles, and this is gonna be a refresher because I don't know if a lot of y'all have seen my Daniel series that we did about the gospel of the kingdom, but we're gonna go through how these kingdoms came to power and how they're also linked to the modern power construct. This is gonna be some more precepts for the family, right? So first, family, we're gonna go to 1 Kings chapter 11, beginning at verse 30, where we have the prophet Ahijah prophesying the downfall of Israel. And a quick note, family. Now, I've already told you guys that Israel and Edom are the two arch nemesis in the earth, right? We saw that Shem prophesied to Rebekah that when one would be exalted, the other one would be at the bottom, and that they both could not exist in the same estate. What does that mean? When our people are incarcerated for crimes they didn't commit, when we're locked up, when we don't know who we are and we're funding these hospitals because we're eating pork chops, y'all better talk to me now. When our people are suffering all of the curses of Deuteronomy 28, the nations have built their power off of us being oppressed. I repeat, it takes Zion to be below for these nations to exist. This goes back to that lion. When that lion remembered himself and said, this is my world, right? And I made you to exist. You only exist because I allow it. When our people understand that, we're going to see the downfall of the nations. But what's going on is this society of white supremacy, America, NATO, all of them are able to be these superpowers because of our people. Let me explain a little bit. I don't think y'all understand how the prison system is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Our people are the majority of the people in these different institutions. Why is that important? When you look at the entire concept that America has built this country based on, race, that is Zion, that is Israel being oppressed, is what allowed America to be who they are today. When you have hundreds of millions of free slave labor, of course that's gonna spur your agricultural revolution, which then led to the boom in the industrial revolution. And I can go in depth on that, y'all. I might do a whole video proving how the critical race theory is valid. This nation of America would not exist without our people. But this is spiritual, because Israel being at the bottom allows the nations to be on top. So our people had to spiritually suffer and be on the bottom, mainly because we violate the Most High. Our Father had to take his belt off and whoop us, right? But in him doing that, it gave the foundation, the bones by which the White House is built upon. White supremacy exists with our people being at the bottom. Now I'm going to show you historically in 1 Kings how this came about with the split of the kingdom of Israel. That when the kingdom was united, when all 12 tribes rejoiced under King David, that there was no nation on the face of the earth like unto Zion. All the nations came just to hear the wisdom of Solomon, right? But when our kingdom split, we saw hell break loose, specifically the rise of the Gentiles. Now let's go to 1 Kings. So in 1 Kings chapter 11, beginning at verse 30, we see the prophet Ahijah, and it reads, "And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him and rent it in 12 pieces. This is the garment of Jeroboam." Now this is where the Yoruba people come from in terms of King Jeroboam, but that's a whole nother video. "And he said to Yaruba, or King Jeroboam, Take 10 pieces, for thus saith the Most High Yah, the mighty one of Israel, behold, I will rend or tear to pieces the kingdom out of Solomon's hand, and will give 10 of the tribes to you." Verse 32. "But he shall have one tribe for my servant David's sake," because of David, because he was a man after my own heart, because he accomplished all of my will in his generation, that I will remember David. Not because of Solomon, but because of his father David. "And for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel." Verse 33. because that they have forsaken me and have worshipped all these false gods, Ashtoreth and Chemosh of the Moabites, and Milcom of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways, the laws, statutes, and commandments, to do that which is right in mine eyes, and to keep my statutes and my judgments as David did. Howbeit, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life for David's sake. But after that, in verse 35, but I will take the kingdom out of his son Solomon's hand and will give it unto thee. This is the beginning of the end of Israel. Not for always, but we see that because Solomon had all these strange women, these concubines, dude was getting it in from left and right to the ends of the earth, all right? Because Solomon's heart then became changed. And I gotta tell y'all, so let me drop a nugget for Israel. Be careful about when you going after, I'm gonna go straight up say it. The Most High first told Israel, do not marry outside of your race. Sow your seed in the field of your people so that your race may be magnified. This is we already did a teaching on that with 2nd Esdras. But basically, when you have relations with these other nations, these foreign women, and not just the men of Israel, but the women of Israel, it contaminates your heart, because your heart can never be 1,000% for your people, because when you lay down at night, your allegiance is to the other races. So you never can speak what you really want to say. You can't never stand for your people the way you really want. I'm just gonna keep it real. When you marry outside of your people. Now, to all those that have, I'm not saying that you're utterly the Most High dropped you off, but what I am saying is that it makes it hard, and a lot of y'all can attest for that, to stand for your people. That's why the commandment was for Israel to marry within their own race, so that the nation of Israel might be magnified, and the hearts of y'all's people might be strong toward the Most High, might be strong for their people, right? So because Solomon didn't do that thing, and Solomon had to increase the taxes on Israel because he was sleeping around with all these other women, so he couldn't treat their nations inferior because his heart was with their women. Y'all better talk to me now. So then his people suffered, and they said, man, Solomon, you making hard. Historically, y'all check out all the scholars. If you watch the History Channel, you'll see how Solomon, it was said, was increasing the taxes, the burden upon the people. Now we see this reach a peak with his son Rehoboam. Now we see that Jeroboam, the prophet, is prophesying that the kingdom, the 10 tribes of Israel, would be given to Jeroboam. This is where you get the northern kingdom. This is where you get Israel, the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, Ephraim. All of this belonged under Jeroboam. Now Rehoboam was the king, or the descendant of Solomon, the king of Judah. Now what happened was the older men told him, they said, Rehoboam, it would beseech thee that if you would decrease and have some mercy on the people, that it would be well with thee. Rehoboam, a young, cocky, ignorant young Israelite, said, well, my pinky finger's stronger than my dad jump. They thought they had it bad under him. I'm gonna keep this thing going. I'm the king, right? This foolish, ignorant young Israelite said, I ain't gonna lay off. So he keeps the taxes high. And the 10 tribes said, we ain't having this. To your tents, O Israel, we don't want nothing to do with the house of Judah. So this is when the 10 tribes revolt against Rehoboam. But the Most High already prophesied this and said that Rehoboam would keep the house of Judah. Judah remained loyal. They said, we're gonna stick with you because of Judah, because you from Judah, right? So we see right then the 2 kingdoms split. Now what happens next? It's in 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 24. The Assyrians find out. Now y'all, this is what I got to tell all my Israelites. When y'all beefing and doing this madness over the most arbitrary things, oh well, and I'm gonna go ahead and deal with it. Some of y'all arguing,
but you can't say Jesus, or you can't say Yeshua. It's Yeshaya, or Shahusha, or Shahushua.
When y'all doing all them semantics, when white folks gunning us down on the street, and you arguing about stuff that it is not time for us to argue about that kind of stuff. We are under oppression. We don't even know who we are. When you go to witness to your brothers and sisters and tell them that they Israel, you can't go up to them and say, well, his name is Yeshua. They're gonna be like, who are you talking about? Sometimes it's better, if it's possible, to walk in peace with your people, right? Because Yeshua prophesied that a kingdom divided amongst itself cannot stand, and that's exactly what happened to our people. That when we started beefing amongst each other, and Rehoboam didn't have mercy on his own brethren, the kingdom split. And when the nations found out, when Assyria found out, they said,
"Oh, the mightiest nation on earth. Oh, they divided. Oh man, it's over with. It's game, set, match."
And he went in that thing and conquered Israel, conquered the northern kingdom, conquered the 10 tribes, and that's when it went downhill after that. Now, after Assyria conquered the 10 tribes, Judah was the only kingdom left that was autonomous. But we will see during the time of Daniel, the 3 Hebrew boys, the Babylonian Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar, and I'm gonna put that up on the screen to show you guys some information about the Babylonian Empire, when it came to power and that kind of thing. But the Babylonian Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar is that head of gold. Now this goes to the statue of Daniel. Now we talked a little bit about it on the last video, that Daniel has this vision and he interprets the very heartbeat of Nebuchadnezzar to him. And he says, "Nebuchadnezzar, this is the dream that you had." Because Nebuchadnezzar said, "I got this strange dream I had, but nobody could interpret it." So he made a decree that not only did he want the dream interpreted, that he wanted somebody to tell him what his dream was. And this is pretty deep. Y'all got to read about this in Daniel 1 and 2. And I bring this up just to show you that this statue vision, that this dream that Nebuchadnezzar has, is really a prophecy of every people that will rule the earth until Christ comes back. That statue represents every empire that will ever rule before Israel is restored and the kingdom is given back to Israel. And I gotta tell y'all, this is the gospel. When you read about in the gospels, the gospel of the kingdom, or the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven, I'm gonna go through this, is not talking about the first heaven, which is the sky, right? It's not even talking about outer space or the second heaven. It's not even talking about the third heaven where the Most High resides. But the kingdom of heaven is a fourth kingdom. This is talking about government. This is talking about the world system and the ruling class, right? This was prophesied to be Israel. Israel was always prophesied from Deuteronomy 7 verse 6 to be above all nations.
As you can see, this is the NKJV Cultural Bible, Cultural Background Study Bible. Now, let's take a look inside, shall we? Terminology page is what I really want to go to, you guys. And as you can see, under the age to come, now this is in the Cultural Cultural Background Study Bible. As you can see, age to come, the most basic scheme of ancient Judean belief about the future was that at some point, the current age of hardship would end and God would establish a new era of peace, i.e. the kingdom, justice and righteousness. Jewish people generally expected Israel to be exalted over the nations in that coming age. Now let's look at already and not yet. A phrase scholars often use to summarize the early Christian perspective on God's future kingdom. So now this piggybacks off age to come. Because we recognize that the coming Messiah has already come once, that Christ's resurrection is the first installment of the promise for future resurrection, and that the gift of the Spirit gives us a foretaste of the future world, we can speak of an already dimension of the kingdom as well as looking forward to its not yet consummation. I just want to mainly point out that the scholars understand that the Jewish people, Israel, already knew and expected Israel to be exalted during this era of peace and justice and righteousness in the earth. Israel being the priests and the kings and the rulers during this time period. This piggybacks Acts chapter 1 verse 6, where Peter says, Lord, at this time will you establish again the kingdom unto Israel. Shalom.
But when the kingdom split, because our people couldn't stay together and keep the Most High statutes, the Most High took his belt off and whooped us. And when our kingdom fell, when the kingdom of heaven went to hell, right? That's when the nations, they come to power. And Daniel has this vision where he explains to Nebuchadnezzar
every kingdom that will rule the earth. And it's this statue, I'm going to put it on the screen for you guys, that has a head of gold, arms and chest of silver, abdomen of brass, thighs and legs of iron, and feet iron mixed with clay. This is every empire that is going to ever rule before Yeshua comes back. Now, this vision is repeated in Daniel 7. Now, we talked about this on the last video. Y'all got to check that out for more detail. But Daniel also has a vision of the four beasts. And I'm going to go back to that a little bit later. But basically, in the statue, the head of gold is King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian Empire. The arms and the chest of silver represents the Medes and the Persians, that Medo-Persian Empire. The abdomen of brass is the rise of the Greeks, the Greek Empire. The legs of silver, the legs and the thighs of iron represents the Roman Empire. And that new Roman Empire, them 10 toes that's iron, but it's mixed with clay. So it's like the Iron Roman Empire, but it has a different element to it. It's a weaker, lesser down version of it. This is this new Mystery Babylon Roman Empire, whose religion is Roman Catholicism and is used to unify the 10 market toes or companies, which is the European Union or the European nations. And that little big horn that comes out of the midst of NATO is America, Babylon the Great, the daughter of Babylon. So that final empire, and we're going to go back to that, is talking about America and NATO, right? And it comes after Rome. So America and the European Union is really Rome reborn. So all of this, Daniel explains to King Nebuchadnezzar. So first Babylon comes to power. And then the first thing they do is say, oh, it's some more Israelites left? Oh, we didn't get all of the tribes. They go in and conquer the kingdom of Judah and lead all of Judah into captivity. And they take the smartest, brightest Judeans and they make them like Daniel and the 3 Hebrew boys. Those that were just brilliant, they were sharp, they were bright. We see all this happen during the Babylonian Empire. After the Babylonian Empire, we see the Medo-Persian Empire. And I'm going to put that on the screen so y'all can see that. Of note, during the Medo-Persian Empire, there is a king by the name of Cyrus. Cyrus finds out that the Most High Yah is the one who created the heavens. He whose going forth has been of old. A God so powerful that he prophesied Cyrus's birth before it happened. All the way down to the cat's name he already prophesied. Isaiah shows this cat that in the book of Isaiah chapter 45. And he says how Cyrus would be instrumental in helping his people. When Cyrus finds this out in the Medo-Persian Empire, he says, I'm going to allow Israel to go back to their land. So he issues a decree for funding, for reparations, for all of these things to send Israel back to the land of Israel. Now, after Cyrus is gone and the Medo-Persian Empire is done, we see the rise of the Greeks. We see the birth of white supremacy. We see the creation of the Greco-Roman Empire starting with the Greeks. Now, all of this history was taken out of the King James Bible. I repeat, the history of the Greeks was taken out because this history is mentioned in 1st and 2nd Maccabees. In it, we see the Colosseum games. We see sellout Negroes that made an allegiance with white folks. We see them running butt naked in the Colosseums and eating pork chops and saying we want to be like the other nations. We see the Greeks create the concepts of the house and the Senate and their Roman cathedral. All of these concepts that America uses and implements today, all these offshoot nations, we see this being born during the time of the Greeks. Now that's a lot of history. Y'all gotta read Maccabees. But I'm gonna go through what was going on during the time of the Maccabees, and we're gonna see that this is how Yah's people became Hellenized. So when we talk about the gospel of the kingdom, y'all, I know this is a lot of information. Y'all take some notes now, and y'all replay this as much as you need. But when we talk about the gospel of the kingdom, the gospel is only for Israel. I repeat, the gospel, the good news, the covenants, the adoption, all of these things we read in Romans chapter 9 verse 3, Hebrews chapter 8 verse 8, all of this pertain to Israel. So when you read about, y'all gotta stay with me now. So when you read about Gentiles that Paul was sent to bring salvation, this was Hellenized people. This was a people mixed in. They was keeping other customs either by force or by choice through captivity. We see that Paul was going after these lost sheep. When did this event start? You could say it started with the Assyrians and Babylonians and the Medes, maybe, because Cyrus allowed them to go back to the land. So it had created a sense of identity for Israel. But during the times of the Greeks, we see that under Alexander the Great and specifically his descendants, it would be illegal for our people to practice Judaism, to practice Torah, to keep the Sabbath, to name their kids Israelite names, to say that they don't eat pork. There was a policy of Hellenization that made our people have to mix in. And this happened because you had some sellout Negro coons that loved the glory of the Greeks more than their own heritage, and we about to read about it. So in 1 Maccabees, we see, beginning at verse 10, a wicked descendant come after Alexander the Great. Now this guy's name was Antiochus or Antiochus. And this joker would do some evil, y'all, that is unbelievable. And I think I'm gonna have to do a follow-up because this is a lot of history. But in verse 10 we see, and there came out of these Greeks a wicked root. Now let's see who these Greeks are. Let's go back to verse 1. So in 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 1 it says, and it happened that after that Alexander, the son of Philip, the Macedonian or the Greek, who came out of the land of Chittim. This is that Zepho history, y'all. Now a lot of y'all try to say, well, the book of Jasher, the book of Jasher. There are so many scriptures that white folks could not extract all of this stuff out that Bible, and there's always gonna be a silver lining. There are so many different corroborations that prove who these people are being linked back to Esau. And why do I bring that up? Because it says Alexander the Great was a Greek, but he came out of Chittim, which is ancient Rome. This goes back to Zepho. I told y'all now. Zepho became a god for these people. Zepho, the grandson of Esau, went to ancient Chittim and became one with those people and conquered all of Tubal, all of Media, all of the island European countries. This, his descendants, is Alexander the Great. This is his legacy. This is his descendant. Let's read about it. So, and it happened after Alexander the Macedonian out of Chittim, ancient Rome, Zepho's seed, had smitten Darius the king of the Medes and the Persians, that he reigned in his stead. So we already talked about Assyria came, conquered the 10 tribes. Babylon came and conquered Judah. Then the Medes and the Persians came, and Cyrus allowed them. He said, okay, I know y'all slaves. I know y'all are slaves, but you can go back to your land. But after Darius came Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, when he conquered, when he overcame Darius, he was a Zepho Edomite descendant, and he had a group of men that came after he died that he split his empire up with. So you got Alexander the Great, he conquered Darius, and he had descendants or generals that split up all of his empire and ruled. One of these is Antiochus, who is hell on the wheels. Antiochus is the epitome and the foreshadowment of the Antichrist. Now we're gonna do another lesson on that, but let's go back to this. So we see Antiochus in verse 10, and it says, and there came out of them, out of the generals that descended after Alexander the Great to rule his empire. And after them came a wicked root named Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes. Epiphanes means light bearer. But a lot of the Greeks called Antiochus Epimanes, which was a madman, because Antiochus, he took Hellenization to the next level. He made sure that every people worshiped the Greek gods, or he would profane their gods in the utmost cruelty. Now he was the son of Antiochus the king that came before him, who had been a hostage at Rome or Chittim. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Now let's scroll down. Let's go to verse 11. In those days of Antiochus went there out of Israel wicked men, wicked, sorry Israelites that didn't love their forefathers, didn't love Torah, wanted to be, oh, I want to blend in. I want to be an American. We American. Don't call me no Israelite. I'm American. You know, I ain't no African American. I'm American. I love this country. Red, white, and blue. Red, white, and blue. With liberty and justice for all. Negro. Them kind of niggas, that spirit, I'm sorry, y'all, existed during the time of history and the time of the Greeks, where these Israelites would rather assimilate and adopt the assimilation tactics and religion and culture and customs of another people rather than be proud of who they are, rather than serve the Lord their God, rather than keep his laws, statutes, and commandments. And this the kind of stuff that the Most High said, I have had enough of this. If y'all want all these gods, I'm going to turn you over to Jesus, and I'm going to let you serve all these Greeks, and I'm going to send you into captivity. But let's read it. So in verse 11, in those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded a lot of other Israelites. So they was leaven, y'all. They went through trying to corrupt all of the nation, saying, come on, y'all, let's go and make a covenant with these Greeks, man. They pretty cool, man. Antiochus, that man crazy, man. We don't want to mess with him. Let's make a covenant with the heathen that are around us. They got us surrounded already. For since we departed from them, we had much sorrow trying to just do what we supposed to do and keep the law, man. That stuff ain't fun like what they doing. Verse 12. So this device, this wicked plan, pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward in doing this that they went to the king himself. They went to Antiochus himself, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the Greeks. Let's keep reading. Whereupon they built, watch this, a place of exercise, gymnasiums. This stuff come from the Greeks. This stuff come from the ancient European, the ancient Edomites. They built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen. Now, verse 15 is big, you guys. And they made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. Y'all, we got to deal with this. So first we're seeing that the gymnasiums and stuff come from the Greeks. Then we're seeing wicked Israelites that went to the king Antiochus and said, man, give us permission to live like y'all. We want to be just like y'all. And of course Antiochus was like, okay, hey, you want to be like us? That makes our job easier to conquer you. So they allowed them to build these gymnasiums and do their own thing. And we saw in verse 16 that these wicked Israelites that didn't care about their heritage and their history made themselves uncircumcised. I repeat, these wicked Israelites made themselves uncircumcised. Why do I bring this up? Paul in the New Testament says, who were in times past called Gentiles and were called the uncircumcision by those of the circumcision. So this is why I tell y'all, the people that Paul was going to were actually scattered, Hellenized, mixed in Israelites. And I know a lot of y'all still gonna buck. Let me go ahead and show y'all something real quick. Y'all think this is a game. Your boy got receipts every day. In Israel Redividus, this is a Harvard. I'm gonna show you the Harvard stamp. I'm gonna put that on the screen for y'all. Yeah, I'm gonna put that up there. It should pop up. It got the Harvard stamp in here. Let me make sure. Now y'all check this out now. Put it on the screen, me brother. Harvard University Library. See, I'm telling y'all now, your boy got receipts. In Israel Redividus, it says that the call of Gentiles, when you look at the call of the Gentiles, and the theologians examine the theory that in actuality, these Gentiles that Paul was sent to were Greek-speaking Israelites, were Hellenized Israelites. That's why when you see in Acts 6 verse 1, it says that there was a murmuring between the Hebrews and the Greeks. Now, when you look at the etymology of these words, when you look into a Greek concordance, you see that that Grecian word is actually Hellenist. Why do I say that? That means that it wasn't a murmuring between Israelites and European Greeks. There was a murmuring between Israelites that practiced the law and the Torah versus those that spoke the Greek language, kept the Greek customs. This goes back to the Harvard Israel Redivivus that says that the Gentiles that Paul was sent to were Israelites like African Americans today that loved the country of their captivity and the culture thereof more than the heritage of their forefathers, more than the law, statutes, and commandments, more than serving the Father that led them by the hand through the waters and delivered them out of captivity, rained down bread from heaven, rained down fire upon their adversaries, made it dark in Egypt, killed the firstborn. You don't want to have nothing to do with that God that loved you so, that protected you in the midst of every danger around you. But then you get around these nations and you want to be just like them. The same American Europeans that went into Africa and stripped your butt naked and beat your history out of you and named you Toby and changed your identity and fed your babies to alligators and took your young men and incarcerated them or gunned them down on the street unarmed with sweet tea and Skittles in their hand. Y'all don't want to talk to me. So when I see these Israelites, these Negroes come against us for doing this work, those that's doing the work of master, I'm just going to do the work of the nations, and you think you're doing God's will, we see that same spirit of siding with the enemies of Yah, because that's who they are. These white Europeans that have done what they've done to Yah's people are enemies to Yah, because the Most High didn't tell them to do this stuff, but he knew they were going to do it because he was whooping our tail for what we did, which that's a family matter. But woe to him that has the cup of trembling in his hand. Woe to the nation that did the inflicting. See, the Bible says, Yeshua said it plain. He said that testing and trials gonna come, but woe to the one that does the testing. Yeah, I had to whoop my people, but woe to y'all nations that I used to do it, because y'all took it too far. And now I gotta bring that judgment. So I say this because a lot of these Israelites think they're doing Yah's will by fighting their people, fighting people like myself, saying that we need to turn back to our history and our heritage. Oh, they don't matter. You know, we got rights now. We accept it. We got the civil rights bill, and they ain't shooting us like they used to. Maybe they might shoot one of our kids, but they ain't killing all of them. Negro, what's wrong with you? So during the time of the Greeks, you had these type of Israelites. That was the contention of the early church. You had Israelites that guarded Torah, that believed in the law, statutes, and commandments. And you had some wicked Israelites that
said we just need to do right by Rome, right? And if we make Rome mad, they gonna come get us.
So when you read Israel Redivivus, when you look at Paul's letters, these are things that are hard to understand if you don't know the history. The people Paul had a heart after these Gentiles because Paul was an Italian citizen. He was a Roman. We already know by Genesis 10 that Japheth's borders included Chittim. Chittim is Rome. Rome is Italy. Paul was born there, so he was a Roman, just like me being an African American. So Paul was a Gentile because he was in a Gentile country. I'm not talking about by ethnicity. So he encountered other Israelites that were Roman borns that was living just like the other nations. Just like us Israelites, we deal with our people in America that don't know they Israel, that love sausage, egg, and cheese biscuits, that don't care about trying to figure out who we are. That's the same thing that was going on during Paul's time. This stuff is powerful, y'all. But let's go back to the Greeks. So we see that these Israelites made a covenant with the Greek king Antiochus and said, man, we want a gymnasium. Man, we want a senate like y'all. We want to make ourselves uncircumcision. Man, we want to have the extra clean. I'm sorry, y'all, I just had to say it. But yeah, we want to be just like y'all. We want to run butt booty naked in the Colosseum games. This is the history that they don't teach us. That's why they took Maccabees out. This is pure history. Our people made ourselves uncircumcised, made ourselves Gentiles. We wanted to be just like the other nations. This is why they took these books out, because it shows you that this Bible was only for Israel. That when you read the New Testament, it was a family reunion of Yah restoring his people and bringing them back to their heritage, right? But not just that. During the time of the Greeks, you got these wicked Israelites. Antiochus, because he knew he had support from these sellout coons, took it too far. Antiochus started doing things like going and raiding the temple. Not just that, but he would pit who he wanted to be the high priest. He would pit them in positions of power. So Antiochus said,
man, I already got me a goon squad because that kingdom divided can't stand. So I'm going to use these Israelites, I'm going to go in and do my thing. I'm going to go in that temple, take some gold out. I'm going to do my thing.
Right? But you had a family called by Matthias and Judah Maccabee and his brethren. and they watched this madness. And the zeal of the Most High Yah rose in their spirit and said, in our temple, and the temple that the Most High made for his people? And Judah Maccabee and them, the zeal of the Lord of hosts rose up in them and said, this ain't finna go down like this. Antiochus would go in the temple and sacrifice swine in the temple of the Most High Yah. I'm talking about some dreadful blasphemy at the highest level. And why also do I bring that up? Because Paul said the only thing we're going to tell the Gentiles is to not sacrifice meats or eat meat sacrificed to idols. What was Paul talking about? This is where you have to know the history. The Greeks, when they made sacrifice to Zeus and the Olympus pantheon, they would offer swine's flesh. So Paul is low-key telling the early church, get them off of them pork chops, them sausage, egg, and cheese biscuits. This is when you know the history. Antiochus went into the sacred Holy of Holies with a pork chop in his hand and threw the bones before the Most High's holy place. And Judah Maccabee and them said, we had enough of this chaos. He armed his other 4 brothers, and with their father leading them, and they waged war against them Greeks. They said, it ain't going down like this. Not with my heritage, not with my history. Y'all making fun of what we come from, our laws, our statutes. This is who we are. This is our father, right? And they went to war against them Greeks and won. Not just went to war, but they won against them Greeks. They cleared the temple out and they dedicated the temple back to the Most High Yah. And we see the birth of the holy day known as the Feast of Dedication. This is in John chapter 10 verse 22 that Yeshua himself kept. That me and my family also kept, and a lot of y'all Israelites keep as well. This is also known as Hanukkah, because while they were getting them Greeks up out the temple and stopped raiding and doing all that foolishness, they lit a menorah that stayed lit for 8 days. So when you see the extended branch of the menorah, this has to do with Hanukkah, not the traditional 7 branches, which is the actual menorah. But when they have the 9 branches, it represents when they lit it that night, it stayed lit for 8 additional days. This is where we get the Feast of Dedication. So why do I go through all this history, family? This was the rise of white supremacy. They was going in, desecrating the temple, just abominations, blasphemy, and you had a family that said, you ain't finna do this. But what we see is that Judah Maccabee and them, even though they overcame these Greeks, there would be a stumbling block, right? Because when they overcame the Greeks, we would see later on that Rome would get involved when they came to power. And Rome would put their own people in positions of power in the land of Israel. How did this happen? Because John Hyrcanus and his brother Aristobulus started beefing. Now these are descendants of the Maccabean family. They started beefing about which one was going to come to power. And because our people couldn't get along, Rome put Pompey in 65 BC in the land of Judea to squash that stuff. He says, since y'all arguing, right, and we are the empire, we gonna put our people in there because we don't want no chaos going on that we got to get involved with. So this is where we saw, and I'm gonna put that clip in here, you guys, where the Pharisees, the Sadducees, these religious groups were not Judeans by birth. This is where we see Herod the Great Red Dragon was actually an Edomite that had a fetish for Maccabean princesses, for Judean women. His descendants were chocolate Edomites because he descends from his forefathers being Edom, right? And I'm gonna put that clip in here. So family, when we see all these things happen, when these Greeks come to power, we see the longing of our people to become a kingdom again. Because when Rome gets in charge, when they get involved and they put their puppet leaders in power, our people catch hell. Whenever you had a group that said, man, we need to take charge of this land, we need to reclaim Judea, free Palestine, free Israel, you would have fallout, smoke, mothers crying before their sons because their sons are not. You had false religious leaders and Pharisees and Sadducees that were not Jews by birth, no, but were actually Edomites. You had the Herodian dynasty of white supremacy, a Edomite king that killed any potential threat, any Marcus Garvey, any Malcolm X. He was the J. Edgar Hoover before J. Edgar Hoover. He screamed any rebel rouser, any person that will try to rise up and deliver Zion and free Israel and free Judea. This is the chaotic environment that you had during the time of the Romans. This is the scene that Yeshua ben Yosef comes into. He comes into this atmosphere of a people oppressed, a people longing for freedom, and he says, behold, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom, the Black Revolution, the Judean exaltation, the resurrection of the 12 tribes, the restoration of the dry bones of Ezekiel. Behold, the kingdom of the Most High Yah, the mighty one of Yaakov, the holy one of Yasharal. The kingdom of the Most High Yah is at hand. And this is what he was preaching. The kingdom of heaven was when Israel would reclaim their land, when Israel would be freed from all the Gentile powers, when Israel would reclaim autonomy. This was the gospel. We see in the book of Deuteronomy where it says that when the kingdom is restored to Israel, as it were the days of heaven on earth. In Acts chapter 1 verse 6, Peter says, Father, he says, Lord, Yeshua, after your resurrection, will you now restore the kingdom unto Israel? Y'all, this was the gospel. This was the mission of Yeshua. Yeshua's coming into this Roman white supremacy, this Edomite ran environment with puppet religious figures that then sold out for the white man. He came into this environment to unite his people, to restore their identity, to restore their heritage, and to raise them up as a kingdom, fight against Rome, fight against Edom, and establish a system of government based on Torah, based on the law, statutes, and commandments. A African Eastern I am because we are a loving community-based worldview, right? Where if Big Mama had sugar and Aunt Sally had Kool-Aid, the whole village drank a glass. This type of mindset was antithesis or the opposite of the Romans. And for one to exist, the other one got to be destroyed. But first, Yeshua had to unite the lost tribes of Israel. He had to restore all of Zion back to who they were. The Jews, those that of Judea that practiced the Torah, and the Gentiles, the Hellenized, Greek-speaking Israelites. This was Yeshua's mission. Yeshua said it himself in Matthew chapter 15 verse 24. He said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This just didn't start there. This started from the beginning. In Matthew 1:21, when the angel visits Mary, the angel prophesies that you shall call his name Yahusha, for he shall save his people from their sins. In Matthew chapter 2 verse 6, it says that, O Bethlehem, Judea, though you be least of the providences of Judah, out of thee shall come forth the governor which will rule my people Israel. Not just that precept, but in Luke chapter 1 verses 68 through 72, the Most High says, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who has visited and redeemed his people, that we, being saved from our enemies, might worship our Yah without fear. This was the gospel. Israel being saved from their sins. Israel being autonomous and delivered from all their enemies. This is the gospel of the kingdom, you guys. And this is the gospel that I preach to y'all. I preach the gospel of our people being restored. Our people turning back to Torah and the faith of Yeshua. Our people not calling themselves niggas, spick spoons, and cartoons, or Crayola crayon colors, or two continents slapped together like a lonely sandwich. But we are Zion. We are the 12 tribes. Let's go. We are the 12 tribes of Israel. Yurubah. B'nai Ephraim of the tribe of Joseph. And that we, when we come together under our identity in Torah, that the nations will be destroyed, that the nations will be judged, that those that led us away captivity gonna be destroyed, they're gonna be killed with the edge of the sword, and the remnant going into captivity. That's the gospel Yeshua was preaching. But Yeshua was calculated. He spoke in parables. And this is the same wisdom that we see in Paul. But the mission never changed, because we see the 12 did the same thing Yeshua did. They went to the lost sheep. Because in 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 1, Peter, an apostle of the Most High Yah, says to the strangers scattered, the Israelites that have been scattered, dispersed because of captivity, mixed in all the nations. That is who Peter was talking to. Not just him, but James, the very brother of Yeshua, comes on the scene and says, to the 12 tribes of Israel, scatter peace and blessings, right? And Paul himself, we already talked about, was a Roman-born citizen. I repeat, Paul was a Roman-born citizen. So he was a Gentile. This is why in Galatians, we're going to put that on the screen, 4 verse 5. We got to end this, y'all. Now, in the same book of Galatians, this is where the whole contention of neither Jew nor Gentile arises. Let's go to Galatians chapter 4, beginning at verse 5, and it reads, to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. Wait a second, y'all. Let's go back to Romans chapter 9, verse 3, because this piggybacks it. In Romans, recall that in chapter 9, verse 3, it reads, for I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ for my people, my brethren, my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites. To them pertains the adoption. Whoa, wait a second now. To them pertains the adoption. Wait. Now let's go back to Galatians chapter 4, verse 5. To redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive adoption of sons. Wait a second. If the adoption pertains to Israel, right? And it says to redeem them that were under the law. This is in the book of Galatians. Paul is talking to Israelites. So in Galatians, we see that Paul says that when we receive the adoption, and we see he says in Romans 9 that all of these, the blessings, the covenants, all of these things pertain to Israel. Hebrews 8:8 says, behold, I will make a new covenant with the house of Judah and the house of Israel. The new covenant was the restoration of this family, the restoration of Israel. The kingdom was the 12 tribes coming together, turning back to their heritage and going back to the land under their Messiah. This was the gospel that Yeshua preached, that the 12 apostles preached, that Paul preached, the gospel that I preached to y'all. Our people being restored and turning back to the law, statutes, and commandments and the faith of Yeshua and the Most High sending Mashiach to get us back to that land. So with that, y'all, I know this was a lot of history. Y'all comment what parts y'all want me to do a follow-up, which parts y'all might want to know more about and all that kind of thing. And we're going to do it, y'all. So with that, peace, love, blessings. I love you all. We could not do this work without y'all. I'm going to pick that cash up again in case you guys want to support this work. And I hope you all were blessed by this lesson. So peace, love, and blessing. Oh, Israel, I love you all with the love of the Messiah. Shalom. All praises to the Most High Yah.